Good evening, everyone. I'd like to apologise first of all for the late start, but we've been having some issues that we needed to address, and with the fair being here, I think a lot of people have been stopped getting here on time by traffic, so I do apologise. But here we go. Welcome to this meeting of the Plans Committee on Thursday, the 13th of November 2025 for Charnwood Borough Council. Please can I ask everyone present to please turn off your mobile phones or switch them to silent to ensure that the meeting is distraction free. May I remind all those present that the meeting is being live streamed to the Council's YouTube channel, and that by attending the meeting you are giving your consent to being filmed. A notice with further information has been provided in the public gallery. Under the openness of local government bodies regulations, people may also film or record this meeting, and this is outside the Council's control. For those watching the live stream, the Planning Officer presentation has been published on the website for those who wish to view it, and it can be found on the agenda page for Plans Committee for the 13th of November 2025. Could I ask that members of the committee use their microphone every time they speak to ensure that the viewers of the live stream and recording can hear the discussion. For the benefit of those watching the live stream and members of the public here this evening, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Councillor Lenny and I'm Chair of the Plans Committee. Other members joining us on the Plans Committee this evening are Councillor Corey Lowesley, who's the Vice Chair, Councillor Fryer, Councillor Good, Councillor Infield, Councillor Matthews, although he's not quite here yet, but he has said that he's on his way, Councillor Monk, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Smidovic, and Councillor Snart and Councillor Taylor-Durrant. The planning officers present this evening are Mr. Pickrell, over the far end there, and Ms. Walker, who will present some of the other items. Our lead officer for this evening is Mr. Bennett, and our Democratic Services Officer is Miss Dobson. I'd also like to welcome Mr. Howarth, our legal advisor for the evening. Speakers will be called forward at the appropriate time and will have 3 minutes to speak. When 1 minute of time is remaining, they will be advised by the Democratic Services Officer, Miss Dobson. We have had a late request to speak from Councillor O'Shea on behalf of Leicestershire County Council in respect of the application P/22/1031/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford. Are members of the committee happy for him to speak this evening? Could I please have a show of hands? It's unanimous.
Madam Chairman, may I just ask the question? Now you've said Mr. O'Shea can talk or speak. Is that for 3 minutes or is it sharing? I find it a bit difficult to understand that we've got down here 4 actual speakers for 3 minutes, which seems crazy to me. I understand and I know that this is a cross-boundary application, and I do believe that the representation should be made for the people living outside of the administration area of Charnwood Borough Council. These residents are actually involved. They are right close to the entrance to the cycle pedestrian way, and it does affect their way that they are carrying out being at Leicester Road. So I think I need to bring that to attention. I would like to get it recorded that I'm not happy to see that they're not allowed 3 minutes to actually speak, Councillor Harris and Councillor O'Shea, because I do believe that the local people within Leicester Road should have that representation. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Do you want me to explain that as we discussed? We did discuss this because we were concerned, but unfortunately, the policy of the council and the plans committee in particular is that the objectors have 3 minutes to speak, and if there are 4 people or 3 people or 2 people, then they have the right to speak for 3 minutes, and they would need to organise that themselves in advance.
Just for clarity, Madam Chairman, I do believe the Constitution's silent on that, and I would have thought you had the actual, could actually say that they could speak. So I'll leave it at that, and just to say that I don't think it's very good how we've actually dealt with this, and the representations that are made to the residents of Leicester Road. Thank you.
Yes, and I understand your concerns, and it will be something that will be reviewed.
Chair.
Mr. Bennett.
So thank you through you, Chair, if I can assist. It is the case that the rules are very clear that where there are more than one person in each of the public speaking categories, the 3 minutes will need to be shared between them. That is very clear in the Constitution. What's not clear is how elected representatives from outside the administrative area of Charnwood should be dealt with in the public speaking arrangements. Well, in fact, it's clear because it doesn't mention them at all. And that's the point that Councillor Lenny is making, that the Constitution perhaps needs to be reviewed to take into account that where there are these applications that are close to the administrative boundary, that provision is perhaps made for elected representatives. But because the Constitution is geared to deal with public speaking from residents in Charnwood Borough and elected representatives in Charnwood Borough, there is no provision for those that are outside. So that is what the Constitution says.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Hold on. Councillor Bocker, who has called in application P/26/06/0610/2, Loughborough Road, Burton on the Wolds, and was due to be speaking this evening, is unfortunately now unable to attend and has requested that a statement be read out on her behalf. Is the committee happy for her statement to be read out? All those for? Any against? Any abstentions? Thank you. That's that's unanimous then. Thank you. I will read the statement and confirm that it will have the same 3-minute restriction as all other speakers. Item number 1 on the agenda is apologies. Ms Dobson, have we received any apologies?
I confirm we've not received any apologies.
Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda is minutes of the previous meetings. Is that?
Chair, it's just for the last meeting, the 28th of October.
Yeah, for the last meeting on the 28th of October 25. Is the committee happy to confirm it as a correct record? Please show your hands. That's unanimous. The minutes of the previous meeting have been confirmed as a correct record, and I will sign them at the end of this meeting. The next item on the agenda is questions under committee procedure 12.8. Ms Dobson, have we received any questions?
I confirm no questions have been received.
Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, disclosures of pecuniary and personal interest. Ms Dobson, have we received any disclosures of interests?
I've received a disclosure of interest from Councillor Good in respect of item 5A, P250697/2, Loughborough University Science and Enterprise Park, Ashby Road, Loughborough, whose husband works at Intelligent Energy at the Charnwood building at Holywell Park. She has, however, confirmed that she comes to the meeting with an open mind. Councillor Good and Councillor Corey Losley have disclosed that they have received an email from the agent in respect of items 5B and 5C, which are P221031/2 and P251333/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford. However, they both come to the meeting with an open mind. Could I ask if any other members of the committee have received the email from the agent in regard to the Markfield Lane applications? And I'll just take those down. Councillor Fryer, Councillor Infield, Councillor Monk, Councillor O'Neill, Councillor Palmer, Councillor Seaton, Councillor Smidowitz, Councillor Snart, and Councillor Taylor-Durant. And can you all confirm if you come to the meeting with an open mind, please? Can I just have the... Okay, thank you. Councillor Snart, you'll be speaking, won't you?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'll be speaking on 5, the planning applications, B, which is 1031, and C, 1333, both at Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford.
Thank you. We're now moving on to item 5, planning applications. The first application is item number 5A, reference number P/25/0697/2, Loughborough University Science and Enterprise Park, Ashby Road, Loughborough. Mr. Pickrell, are you ready to present?
Thank you, Chair. Today, the applicant informed the council that commercial issues have arisen which affect the proposals. Instead of determining the application, the applicant has requested that the committee do not determine the LUCEP application and instead hold it in abeyance while the commercial issues are resolved. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Given that the officer has advised that there is a request not to make a decision this evening, may I ask members if they are prepared to remove this item from the agenda for tonight? One moment.
Sorry, Chair, it needs to be in the form of a motion. So if you want to put it forward as a motion,
Oh.
and if it can be seconded, and then obviously... Okay, we can start with the motion first, and then perhaps second it, then move to the vote.
I'd like to move that we remove this item from the agenda for tonight's meeting. Thank you. All in favour? Any against? I think that's everyone, isn't it? Including myself. Thank you, Mr. Pickrell. The next item is 5B. Reference number P/22/1031/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown, Linford. Councillor Snart is moving from the committee to the public gallery for this one. Wearing the right glasses now. I would like to refer to our planning officer, Ms. Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. Excuse me. So we have an application before us for consideration this evening. It's an outline application for proposing 115 dwellings. It's submitted in outline form, so all matters are reserved. So we're actually considering this evening is the principle, the development and the access point. I'll just... Prior to me going on to the actual presentation, we have received a number of late representations on this application, and there is an extra report that everybody has the opportunity to have a look at and digest. If there's any questions later on, then we're more than happy to go through them. Just one point of one of those late representations, we have had, and you'll see it within the report, concern raised about the modelling for the field head roundabout, and that was that's actually in the extras report, and it's come through from one of the objectors. County Highways have come back to us, and they have actually gone back to the objector and just asked where that information was sourced from. So that's that point. But everything else seems to have be responded to within the extras report. But again, any questions, more than happy later. So to move on then, so we have as I said, we have an application for an outline planning permission. You can see that we have the site area here, the location plan. It's an odd-shaped site, but it sits within two linear forms of development between Markfield Lane and Leicester Road. Just a slide here, just to show a little bit of context. So again, you can see here that it's an unused area of land that has a low-key equestrian use on part of it at the moment, but it does sit within linear form, and you can see the roundabout to the west. So we have a number of key issues with this application. As I said, it is an outline permission, so we are looking at the principle and the access, but there are other considerations. I won't go through all of those considerations within my presentation this evening, as they're very detailed within the report, and happy to answer any questions on those, but I will pick up on some points as we go through. So these are the key issues that have been considered with this application. We've received an indicative master plan, as you can see on this slide here. Again, it's in indicative form only, and so the detail will be dealt with at reserve matters stage. We have had negotiations in terms of the area of land that appears to be free of development, and we'll come on to that in a moment in the next slide. Firstly, I'd like to just talk through the access. So we have an access point, and again, all the details are within the officer report. We have a new access following the demolition of a bungalow. County Highways have had a lot of inputs into to finding good solutions to a safe access here. The access point also provides pedestrian pathways either side, and we have tactile paving at the edge of the access point for safe crossing. Also, just so you're aware, down the access road there, we have a 2-metre acoustic fence to ensure that the development in terms of the use of the access and the vehicular use doesn't cause issues with the neighbours either side. During the application, we've had discussions with the National Forest, because there is the ancient woodland down to the east. And as you can see, it's quite well demonstrated on this plan here. We have requested that we have a buffer zone which we planted along the ancient woodland, and that has been secured, will be secured, and is, if members are minded to approve the application, to secure that buffer for the depth that's proposed on the plan here. We've asked for it to be noted on a plan so that we can actually approve a plan, so this is completely secured. We have also secured through this application a development-free zone. So we are proposing where the Suds Basin is just to the south, we're proposing that that area will be development-free completely, and just slightly to the north. So the built form will be in a broad accordance with the master plan, although the master plan isn't actually approved, it is indicative. I just thought it'd be helpful because we're looking at a development here that, whilst it sits within two linear forms in terms of planning policy and the settlement limits, it is located, as we would refer to, in the open countryside. And so we are looking for sustainable forms of development in terms of the NPPF. So this just shows some transport connections. So we have 2 bus stops on the Markfield Lane, and we also have 2 bus stops along Leicester Road. And as you can see within Markfield and the connectivity roads, there is good connectivity from this site over to Markfield. So local facilities and services within Markfield, again, it's just highlighted here, the facilities that are available, that are reasonably or very close to the site. I won't go through all of them, but, we do have a post office, we have a play park, we have a sports centre, and there are schools within Markfield too.
Excuse me, it's the officers who are speaking at the moment, and all representatives of anyone in the gallery will be making their own comments in due course. So if you could please not interrupt, that would be lovely. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So just moving forward onto the conclusion and a planning balance, it's what we have to do when we're considering planning applications in terms of our planning policies. And again, going back a step, we are looking at an outline permission for the principal because the access has been approved by County Highways. So in terms of the principal, we have the basket of policies we have to consider, and they're actually set out here on the slide, and they're actually in the conclusion on the officer report. However, some of those policies are out of date. So whilst as a council we have a 5-year land supply, we can demonstrate that, we do have policies that are out of date in terms of their housing delivery figures. They're not in accordance with the NPPF. So therefore we are, as we call it, 11D is engaged as part of the NPPF. So once that happens, we have to grant permission in the sustainable locations, basically, and unless we can, say that any impacts would significantly or disproportionately, outweigh the benefits. But this is assessed of the framework as a whole. So at paragraph 10.6 of the committee report, we have a table there which demonstrates this application does actually accord with the policies set out in the NPPF. Just moving forward in terms of the benefits of the proposal. So we have some financial contributions, and they are set out. They've not actually all come through on there for some reason. But we have financial contributions towards the school in Markfield, to the early years school, and that you can see the figure there. Unfortunately, the second figure has doubled up for some reason, but there is, again, if I can refer you back to the officer report, there is also a significant contribution towards the primary school and also towards the Send Forest Way School, both at primary and secondary level. And we also have a significant contribution which has been agreed towards the medical centre again in Markfield, and also towards the Markfield Library. I'm not sure what's happened here. So going through again, when we're talking about the planning balance and the benefits of the scheme. So in terms of the scheme we have in front of us, the proposal will add materially to the council's deliverable housing supply. The site has a very good relationship with the key rural area of Markfield, and that's a material consideration in terms of the position of this site, and it weighs heavily in favour of the application. There is a provision for 40% affordable housing, which exceeds the emerging policy requirement currently, which is 30%. The development sits between two linear forms. So going back to the location plan or master plan, so we have two linear forms you can see there, and the development would slot between that. So then in terms of the impact of the character of the area and what is suggested by policy as being in the countryside, that considered there is very limited harm. Natural England have confirmed that they don't believe that the development will have any significant adverse impacts on the designated SSIs. There is potential for biodiversity impact, but this will require mitigation, and that mitigation has been secured or will be secured via conditions and by the Section 106 agreement, which is a legal agreement. So therefore, applying the presumption in favour of sustainable development, particularly when we're talking about the tilted balance and the position we're in with our planning policies, we would look to approve the application, and the recommendation is set out in the officer report. Just if you wouldn't mind, just one point before I finish. We have had a late representation from our legal team, where recommendation A would need to be amended, just to ensure that we have the addition of a mechanism to secure the maintenance of the path link under the next application, and its implementation, so that they are actually connected. So the recommendation A currently says we would enter into an agreement, but it would be into agreements. So we'd have a Section 106 and a unilateral agreement. Just one other point, if you don't mind, referring back to the extras report, there has been some concern about the proposed CCTV cameras or camera and one lighting column that was actually proposed and I will go on to the next application. And when we actually received that application, we realised that the CCTV camera and one lighting column actually fell out of the site boundary for the footpath, and it falls within the housing application red line. Initially, we suggested that we would impose a condition to ensure that we had a scheme come forward and we would look at discharge in that condition. But as the application's in outline, we have a reserve matters application to consider. So that condition has been suggested that we would amend that condition so that the CCTV camera and that lighting, well, the lighting scheme as a whole, would have to come in with the reserved matters at detail, so that that can then be fully consulted on with everybody that needs to consider that. I think that's covered everything in my presentation. Like I say, we have made a recommendation in the officer report, so I'll leave you to discussion. Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Through you, Chair. Just to say, since the extras report was published on 5 o'clock yesterday, we have had one or two late representations which are available on the planning file for members to have seen today. In particular, a representation from the resident that lives adjacent to the proposed access road for the application, raising concerns about noise and disturbance, the design of the access, the loss of amenity and character, and that they don't consider the site to be sustainable in terms of its distance from Markfield. They don't believe it's a walkable distance. General concern about highway safety. Now, they did also send in photographs showing a road traffic accident that I believe occurred yesterday or the day before outside the site of the proposed access as well. And also from a resident off Markfield Lane stating that the evidence was outdated and incomplete for the application, that there were concerns about harm to the ancient woodland to the east of the site, about biodiversity and habitat fragmentation, landscape and visual harm, highway safety and access concerns, privacy, lighting and amenity, and cumulative impact and infrastructure deficit, and also raising concerns about procedural fairness and the consultation process that have been followed. And finally, concerns from the owners of the property 215 at the end of the trackway, concerns about the width of the track and the safety of pedestrians and cyclists, and maintaining that the use of the footpath to provide pedestrian cycling access would impact on their legal right-of-way along that route. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. It's now time for our speakers to come forward, and the first speakers are, as one group, Mr. Ray Palmer, Councillor Claire Harris of Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council, Mr. David Hyde and County Councillor O'Shea. If you are speaking, you need to share the 3 minutes that are allowed under the Constitution. Are you happy you've organised that so that you've got your 3 minutes full?
Chair, can we just confirm who is actually speaking so that I can take that down?
David Hyde.
David Hyde, are you speaking for all of the objectors?
I will be. Unfortunately, you won't allow our borough council or county councillor for Fieldhead and Markfield to talk. You want them to share this 3 minutes, yet they represent Fieldhead, and you've given Fieldhead and Markfield 3 minutes, where you will allow the residents of Newtown Linford, their borough councillor and their parish council to talk.
I do appreciate your concerns, and they were registered by Councillor Snart earlier on. the
Sorry,
constitution.
I apologise, we were late because we couldn't find
Oh,
parking.
right, yeah, because of the fair, probably. We did say that we hope to be reviewing that in future because this isn't first border type of.
The fact that you're allowing it to be a cross boundary should mean that Fieldhead get fair representation. Unfortunately, we're not getting fair representation.
Well, that's the constitution at the moment, unfortunately, and I do appreciate your concerns, but this is your opportunity to speak, and there are 3 minutes for each.
Just to ask Chair, did you see the additional comments that I placed when I'm putting in to speak?
I haven't, no.
So I did request that I may take a little extra time due to being dyslexic and statemented, and I'm having to read a speech. And I shouldn't have to make that my disability public.
No, you didn't need to make that disability public, but we do have the constitution where the rules are that a speaker has 3 minutes, and when there is 1 minute remaining, our Democratic Services Officer, Miss Dobson, will let you know.
No problems. I hope you have someone to represent you tomorrow when I contact them for discrimination.
Thank you.
Just to make you aware of that while we're here. You should be making a reasonable adjustment for someone with a disability. The same as if someone walked in on a wheelchair or crutches. I'm not asking for minutes, I'm asking for probably seconds, that's all.
Chair, is it in our gift to be able to make an exception this moment for a 30 seconds or addition?
I'm just
or 1
taking
minute?
advice on
Thank
that.
you.
1 moment. Mr. Hyde, do you know how long you might require to speak?
Probably about
your
20
piece?
seconds, Chair, that's all. Nothing too major.
Pardon?
Just about 20 seconds. It's just so I can slow down on some of my wordings.
Okay,
Otherwise it'll
so
be,
shall we say 4 minutes? Okay, off you go then.
Thank you. Good evening, councillors. I speak to representative residents of Fieldhead and Markfield, a separate hamlet in a different parish to Markfield. We are adjacent to this particular development. There is a natural barrier between the A50 stated in an old application with the A50 separating that side of Markfield Lane to ourselves. Fieldhead contains 189 houses, less than 500 people, with facilities confined to a Chinese takeaway. All other amenities are in other parts of the parishes and borough. There are two distinct reasons for this. And one of the reasons that we've actually raised this actual issue is we had problems on highways, ecology and drainage. The scale of this development is substantial compared to Fieldhead, which it will sit in. If this village was in Charnwood, you would not allocate this level of housing to a hamlet. It's not okay to do this just because it sits on the next district. The separation from Markfield means that the facilities are not within walking distance. The scope to access facilities other than by car is very much questioned. Why do we say this? Paragraph 9.8.1.13 of the committee report states the provision of foot cycle path link to Leicester Road is necessary to make the development acceptable. This link is considered through a separate application this evening, but is just 3.4 metres wide in places. This is before street lights are installed, reducing the width. Manuals for streets suggest avoiding widths of less than 3.2 metres as drivers squeeze past cyclists, and paragraph 9.11.15 of the committee report, yet the unsuitable width is less than 3.25 metres there. The access serves a house, which is a family house with up to 5 cars. You can't get down there with a car or a lorry if you're on a cycle, pushchair or wheelchair, even if you're less abled. Conflict occurs in respect of the ability to safety use and necessary link with nowhere for anyone to avoid this issue. Assuming you make it to the A50, you need to cross it. The transport assessment notes that there are 48,000 vehicles that use that daily. It's fast, very busy road, which is less than ideal to traverse with children, let alone less mobile people. You also then have issues when crossing Lawn Road. A busy 40-mile-an-hour rat run with no dedicated safe crossing points, traffic lights, zebra crossings. These two roads both need crossing in order to reach the Markfields facilities. The facilities in Markfield are then spread out at 1 kilometre from the centre of the site to the doctors and the closest shop, 1.6 kilometres to the school and 1.4 kilometres to the shops in Main Street. Hinckley and Boswell's response 9.14.5 of the committee report raises concerns about access. They are also right to do so. 800 metres is a standard walking distance, and while some work further, not all will go across sloping grounds and crossing very busy roads. People will simply use cars to get into Markfield as they're not part of the community. Markfield is a suitable location for new housing. In recent years, it's been delivered mainly in the south of the village with only 300 metres distance. Charnwood has a 5-year housing supply, and according to the housing delivery test, the tilted balance is not engaged, and there is an emerging local plan immediately expected to be adopted. Housing is in the lowest order settlement and not accordance with the policy or necessary to meet the housing needs of Charnwood. It should be projected on principles of sustainable development policies CS1, CS25, even before any of the details of this scheme is considered.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Our next speaker on this item is Mr. Steve Lewis Roberts for the agent. Mr. Roberts, you have 3 minutes to speak, and when 1 minute is remaining, our Democratic Services Officer, Ms. Dobson, will let you know. Are you familiar with the
Yes,
the
that's
microphone
fine,
bit?
I am,
Yeah,
thank you.
thank-
Yeah. Okay, good evening, members, and thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicant, Davidson's Developments, a family-owned, 5-star rated house builder with a track record of delivering quality housing throughout Leicestershire. The application site is in a sustainable location on the edge of Markfield, which has a wide range of services and facilities. The site is visually well contained by existing housing on Markfield Lane to the north and Leicester Road to the south, and is therefore an ideal location for residential development. Davidsons are looking forward to delivering an attractive, high-quality housing scheme which will help meet the council's housing requirements. There are no technical objections to the proposals from any of the statutory consultees. I'd like to draw your attention to 3 key responses. The County Highway Authority has confirmed that a suitable and safe access will be provided, and that when considered cumulatively with other developments, the proposals will not have a significant impact on the local highway network. Natural England has no objections, noting that the development will not have any significant impact on designated sites. The National Forest Company has no objections. The illustrative master plan accompanying this outline planning application shows the provision of significant areas of green space, which will provide the framework to deliver a well-designed development. It is important to emphasise that following extensive discussions with officers, the scheme has been amended to remove development in the eastern part of the site, to improve biodiversity and prevent any impact on the adjacent woodland. The effect of this change has been to reduce the scale of development from 150 to 115 dwellings. The development will deliver a mix of house types, of which 40% will be affordable. The scheme will therefore deliver 46 affordable homes, which is a very significant benefit. The Section 106 agreement will also secure financial contributions towards education, highways, improved health, sports and library facilities, national forest planting and allotments. The committee report confirms that this application constitutes sustainable development as set out in the NPPF. The planning officers provided a comprehensive report concluding that the benefits of the development outweigh any harm, and therefore it is recommended that planning permission should be granted. I endorse this recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis Roberts. Our next speaker on this item is Councillor Tim Port on behalf of Newtown Linford Parish Council. Good evening, Councillor Port.
Good evening.
Are you familiar with the equipment?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so you have 3 minutes in which to speak. When 1 minute is remaining, Ms Dobson will let you know.
I understand.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm speaking on behalf of Newtown Linford Parish Council, who wish to strongly object to the outline application for 115 dwellings at 287 Markfield Lane. Firstly, on location and sustainability, the site lies within Newtown Linford Parish, not Markfield. Yet both the applicant's documentation and consultation process largely overlook our parish and its residents. The application refers to benefits for the village as if the site were in Markfield, which it is not. Markfield already has planning approval for 284 new homes under its neighbourhood plan. This proposal would effectively extend that development into our parish without local policy support or adequate infrastructure. Newtown Linford is classed in the other settlements category of the Charnwood Local Plan, suitable for small-scale infill only. A 115 dwelling estate cannot be justified on that basis. The site is not sustainable. There are no local shops, no post office, and the nearest schools, GP surgeries and pharmacies are already full. Bus services are infrequent, just one every 2 hours, so car dependency would be inevitable. Secondly, on highways and access, highway safety would be seriously compromised. The proposed access from Markfield Lane is on a bend with restricted visibility, and its narrow width brings traffic within a few metres of existing homes, creating unacceptable noise, light and air pollution, as well as loss of privacy. Traffic impacts have been underestimated at the A50 roundabout, which already exceeds capacity at peak times. Any additional vehicles from this development will exacerbate congestion and encourage rat running through Newtown Linford Village. Thirdly, on green space and biodiversity, this development would cause serious and irreversible damage to local natural habitats. Although later ecological surveys were undertaken during the correct seasons, the report still failed to acknowledge the importance of this area as a wildlife corridor. The fields and mature hedgerows support bats, owls, badgers, foxes, and a wide range of bird species. The proposed layout brings housing within just 15 metres of established woodland, which would fragment habitats and disturb foraging and nesting areas. The loss of these connected green spaces combined with lighting and human disturbance would have a major negative impact on biodiversity and destroy a valued stretch of open countryside that contributes to the character of both Markfield Lane and the wider parish. In conclusion, these proposals are unsustainable, unsafe and environmentally damaging. The adverse impacts on traffic, local infrastructure, biodiversity and residential amenity would significantly and demonstrably outweigh any benefits. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Port. Our final speaker on this item is Councillor David Snart, who called in the item. Councillor Snart, I believe you are familiar with the equipment.
Could well be.
You have 3 minutes to speak. When you have 1 minute remaining.
This site has a long history of planning appeals that have been to date been refused. The statement in your paper states there is no relevant planning history. This is not true and should be questioned to officers. A pre-application by Bellway was responded to by planning officers stating, "It is my professional opinion that this proposal for residential development on this site would be resisted given the limit of accessibility and sustainability. This site is not allocated in the draft local plan, which is now given significant weight in decision making. This site was not included in the submission document for examination, saying the site contains grassland and brook, Fishbourne Brook. Development is likely to result in isolating an ancient woodland. grassland and loss of habitat. I believe with this information, the harm to develop this site would significantly outweigh the benefits of developing this site, therefore does not accord with DS1. You should also note that significant clearance of the site took place before the planning application was submitted. It is clear from the photographic evidence supplied by residents, wildlife habitats will be lost by this development proposal. I turn to the final comments by officers. This indicates 40% loss of area habitats, substantially larger than the previous estimates, even with significant revisions to the original design to mitigate the impact. In my view, if this council is prepared to see the loss of this magnitude to agree of 40% in Charnwood Forest, all is lost for the future of local habitats within the borough of Charnwood. This clearly does not accord with policies CS12 and CS13 of the local plan. We will conserve and enhance our natural environment for its own value and the contribution it makes to our community. Offsetting should be last resort. The effect of this will have on the wildlife around the ancient woodland will be immense. It goes against the principles of nature recovery strategy and should be resisted. I now turn to the entrance road and the site and the devastating thought of the residents living either side of the road. It is not clear from the information provided. It is suggested that the appropriate boundary treatment, such as a 1.8 metre close-boarded acoustic fencing, is erected. Imagine if you were residents living at the side of the proposal fence. I believe on the impact and amenity of the residents on this accord with the Safe Policy EV1 and the local plan and policy CS2 core strategy. You have already heard about the highway situation, so I won't dwell on that. In conclusion, this site for development is not the draft local plan, which now carries a different weight. It has lost 40% biodiversity next to a nascent woodland, has devastated outcomes for residents living next to the site and unresolved. I just say that I respectfully ask the application to be refused. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Snart. I'm going to ask our planning officer if they wish to respond to any of the points raised by the speakers.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay, the committee will now consider the application as presented by the planning officer. And if you would like to comment on this application, please raise your hand to indicate. Councillor Smidovic.
I'm just curious, page 221, it says policy C1 of the emerging local plan, and then talks about small scale new built development, and the current proposal is not considered to be small scale development. So we're talking about C1 and DS1. So could you tell me what would constitute a small scale development? What's the numbers?
Could you please respond?
I probably defer this question maybe to Mr. Bennett, but I would suggest, anything under 10 would be a small scale or modest development. Anything over 10, excuse me, is generally classed as a major development.
Does anyone else wish to comment or ask any questions? We need to... Councillor Corey-Losley.
Sorry, Chair, it's busy up here. So just a couple of things, really. First, a comment, and secondly, a question. So firstly, just to say it's good to see there's plenty of affordable housing on the development, which was good to see. I hope they can find a registered provider for the social housing, but we've got the cascade mechanism there, so I hope that they do. And secondly, if the committee is minded to accept officers' recommendations and to put this forward for approval, it's a very compact site, surrounded on all sides by people's gardens, and there's mention in the report of a construction traffic management plan, but it's not in the conditions. So I just wanted to check, if we approve this outline application, when it comes to reserve matters, will we have that construction traffic management plan as a condition, and will it also set out the working hours of the development of what the construction can do, if that makes sense?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, we could apply a condition. I actually thought there was a condition for a construction management plan, but it may have, it could have quite easily been missed. I would double check just now, but if not, then yes, that's certainly a condition that we could impose, including the working hours, yes. Thank you.
Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I was going to raise a similar point to Councillor Corrie-Loseley. I do think these construction plans, hours of working on any development are so important. And I'm not talking about just big developments. I do think the hours of working, routes, the safe routes in and out. I have mentioned this before now on certain sites with the assistance of the developer. If lorries have gone or vehicles have gone against the plan that's been approved, they are fined and not allowed on site by the developer. So a good developer should and always, I would encourage to do this. That's what, and I was going to say what Councillor Corrie-Loseley.
Thank you. Ms Walker.
Okay. Yeah, just for confirmation, we do have condition 15 within the list of conditions. And it talks about wheel cleansing facilities during construction. We don't have actually wording to talk about operating hours, but that can be certainly amended. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Infield.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the planning officer if she could comment on the loss of biodiversity, which various speakers that we've heard have referred to. I visited the site as part of the site visit today. The area proposed for housing seemed then to be almost exclusively horse grazing. So I'm not quite sure where I stand on this, but I would quite like her comments. Thank you.
Yes, we have had long discussions about ecology on this site, and as we heard from one of the speakers, that we have actually had a reduced number of dwellings in the hope of having a large open space for mitigation and for biodiversity. We have got a loss, and that's been recognised, and a biodiversity net gain or loss under CX13, and we would be securing some off-site units to recoup that loss. So that's a mitigation. Also, in terms of, in terms of, we're talking about corridors and connectivity. We can see from the master plan where we have a no development area, there will be that will be heavily planted, and as you travel from east to west, this street there would be tree lined, so we would hope that we would have again mitigation there in terms of connectivity for biodiversity. Thank you.
Are there any more comments or questions, please? Councillor Smidovic.
I'm just curious if the little road, the lane for pedestrians, I'm assuming it's for pedestrians only, didn't feature, if we didn't allow it, what would be the impact on that particular development?
Yes, so we have, I haven't presented the other application yet, but there is a connectivity in form. So we do have a proposed pathway which would provide connectivity to Leicester Road. When you actually look at the distances, the new access point is approximately the same distance. So we have the new access point with two pathways either side. So it would be, if we didn't have the pathway, residents could walk along the new access and up to the Fieldhead roundabout where there is a controlled crossing. So yes, the pathway we consider is a positive because it creates permeability through the site. But the access distance to the Markhead roundabout is very, very similar.
Could you please note that the members are trying to ask questions of the officer so that they can make the right decision? If you interrupt the members or the officers, you are preventing that. So please don't do it again. Are there any more questions or comments from members? Councillor Palmer and Councillor Gooding.
Thank you. I must admit I feel rather uneasy about this because it is outside the area for application. It's not an allocated site for housing. The loss of biodiversity, which I think cannot be offset elsewhere satisfactorily, and the fact that it's not a small-scale development. I mean, all those things make me uneasy about this development, proposed development. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Good.
Can I just confirm that all the construction traffic is going to go through a bungalow-sized gap between two houses, please? Without any the noise cancelling thing down at the moment as well?
Yeah, the condition would require the fencing to be installed prior to any construction.
Can you please let the process continue? There are councillors who have genuine concerns and you are simply interrupting everything that you don't like to hear, and we can have you removed. This is your last chance. Thank you. Public gallery.
But it is going through that gap. All the construction traffic, the whole site is going through that one gap.
Yes, the construction traffic would be going through that gap. And as we've discussed before, we can amend condition 15 to ensure that the operating hours are secured by condition to ensure that it doesn't become a nuisance. And the acoustic fencing will be provided prior to any construction taking place. Thank you.
Any more comments or questions from the members? Councillor Monk.
Thank you, Chair. Just a few comments, really. I sort of agree with Councillor Palmer. If I lived on any of those areas, I wouldn't be too happy with this development. It seems like it's just a bit of land that's been plonked in the middle, and the developers have thought, oh, we'll stick a load of houses there. I'm also concerned, obviously, 115 houses, that's potentially another 200 cars with the traffic network, and that road is horrendous anyway at this point. So that I don't think is 100% sustainable, but that's just my opinion at the moment.
Can you please not interrupt? We can clear the entire public gallery if you wish. So we need to move. Councillor O'Neill, do you wish to ask a question or comment?
Thank you, Chair. I'm in sympathy with Councillor Palmer and her comments. I do have one or two large question marks about this development. I do appreciate the point made by Councillor Curry-Lowe that it does provide a large amount of social housing or housing, accessible. And we do need houses in this country. So I'm still haven't made my mind up. I'd also like to say I don't appreciate the audience participation because I actually feel under a lot of pressure, and I do think all this clapping and cheering from the sides actually makes it more difficult to make a clear decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. I'm looking at Google Maps, as you do, Google Earth, and trying to match up that shape with this shape. Finding that difficult, but I'm getting there. And all I can see is a very high density of trees. Obviously, we've got the ancient woodland there, and there is the buffer zone. I do have concerns that the rest of the site has got quite a lot of trees on it already, and I would like to, and I'm looking up at that one, and I know it's just at the moment it's not indicative of what it's going to be like. But the trees that are there at the moment, is there a plan to keep them all around the perimeter so that the houses that are there at the moment, they have a nice green high hedge blocking their view from that land and hopefully blocking the view from some of these houses. So are those, is there there's obviously a landscape plan, but does that involve removing what is already there?
Yeah, there has been and there is proposed to be some tree removal within the site to make way for the development. And you can see where the site, where just adjacent to the SUDs, those trees are to be retained and that hedgerow is to be retained. And I don't believe the trees along the boundaries are to be removed.
In my naivety, when I first became a councillor and somebody spoke about an acoustic fence, I thought it was something very technical and it's going to be all sorts of fillings and things to take take the sound away, but all it is a bloody big fence. But this is only 1.8 metres. I would be worried if it was any more because it would give you a real serious tunnelling effect when you drove up. So I'm relieved to know it was only 1.8 metres, and we are here to make a decision on this. And I've heard you have some of the planners have on the planning committee have serious concerns about the road structure and the safety aspect of it and the connectivity, but we rely on our highways department to, if there is going to be an issue, if there is going to be a problem, we rely on them pointing that out, and then it gives us grounds to be able to look at the development as a whole and say, look, you know, we have these concerns, and highways has those concerns as well. But unfortunately, highways, not unfortunately, highways don't have concerns on safety. The biodiversity is being met, and the housing ratios for affordable housing is more than we would expect on another development. So I would like to go with officer's recommendation that this application is planned, goes ahead, and I obviously know it's an indicative one. We need to look at it when the full plans come through, And I'm taking it that we will have that opportunity again to be able to see the full plans of the full development.
One moment, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Smidovics.
Because of my colleague mentioning highways, could we know what time of day and month that the highways did the assessment? Because I have found certain days and times vary significantly, whether it was holiday time, when the schools are closed or open. Thank you.
I don't have that information to hand. I'd have to go through the highways assessment that was carried out. But what I can assure you is that, as you know, we've spoken about, County Highways have reviewed the application and they haven't objected to the scheme based on highway safety. And I'd also just like to mention, if that's okay, that National Highways have also been consulted and they have also not raised a concern with the development.
Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to second Councillor Seaton's proposal, and I reserve my right to speak. I would like to have, should it be approved at this stage, a proper plan of hours of working and access to sites, and as much as possible.
Thank you, Councillor Fryer. Councillor Corey-Lursley.
I just wanted to say, Chair, that we've had an extra amendment, amendment to the conditions in the extras report regarding the unilateral undertaking. Yeah. So if Councillor Fryer and Councillor Seaton are happy to have that added in there as well, then I think that would be
the change in the extras report. Through you, Chair, there was also the proposed amendment to condition 28 in relation to the CCTV and lighting column to be dealt with as submissions under the reserved matters as well, which is detailed in the extras report.
That's acceptable, sir. Chair, thank you.
Acceptable for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any further comments or questions from members? We've had a proposal and a seconder for the option of accepting officers' recommendations, which are both A and B, with the additional amendments as Officer Bennett has just. Could you just run through those again so that everyone can understand what they are?
Yeah. Yeah. So there would be an amended, I think it's amended condition 15 for operation hours to be secured. And condition 28, we would expect to see the CCTV and the lighting column submitted with the reserve matters application for full details and consideration. And there is a proposed change to the recommendation to include the unilateral undertaking to secure the site, secure the pathway.
Is that for the access?
Sorry.
Is that for the access?
For the pedestrian access,
Yeah,
yes.
Okay then.
Sorry, apologies.
So members, it's time to make your decisions. All those in favour of the officer's recommendations with the amendments that you've just been given, can you please raise your hand if you're in favour?
That's 3, Chair.
All those against?
Three again, Chair.
And is everyone else abstaining? Can you just raise your hands if you're abstaining?
4 abstentions.
Okey-dokey.
Chair, I just need to point out that somebody has to come up with something else then.
Sorry, Chair, just to remind you, you do have your casting vote.
Pardon?
You do have your casting vote. Where there's a tie in terms of the committee, you do have a casting vote.
I'm sorry, Chair, but they have to have reasons for abstaining. We're making decisions here. We're not slipping away from making a decision.
And I think if you have a vote against or for, we simply ask for the sake of having a proper recording of the figures who's abstained. You don't need a reason to abstain. Or well, at least not in the voting process as far as I'm aware.
That's correct, Chair. There's no requirement to give a reason for abstaining from the vote.
Councillor Smidovic.
I'm happy to give my reason. It goes back to the Constitution.
Okay. So it's just on my vote then. I'm afraid, given the caveats and the fact that we haven't had the reserved matters as yet, at which we've got another bite of this cherry, I'm going to vote in favour.
So it's 5 votes to 4. Sorry, 4 votes to 3, Chair. So the motion is carried.
Thank you. Can we move on to the next item now? Item 5C, number P/25/1333/2, Markfield Lane, Newtown Linford. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Miss Walker.
Thank you, Chair. We've discussed this application kind of in terms of its connectivity, connection with the housing development that we've just discussed. So it is just for a very small portion of an access road that currently serves one dwelling as a private driveway. So the proposal for this small area that's in our borough is to resurface the access track to provide one lighting column. That's all we're looking at for this application. And it would provide a link into Leicester Road for pedestrians and cyclists. So we have the location plan up on this slide. You can see the amount of land that's involved in our boundary, in the boundary. So the blue area of land there, you can see that actually meets with Leicester Road is in HBBC area. So the key issues are, it's a much smaller application, but we still have to consider the principle. We're in the countryside. However, it is a very, very small piece of land. And given the position we've discussed before with the housing development, there would be considered no impact on visual amenity. Residential amenity is a key issue, as is biodiversity and highway safety. You can see here, this is the block plan that was submitted with the application. So the purple line demonstrates the boundary with Hinckley and Bosworth. And then the red line there shows where the footpath site ends and the housing development areas would start. You can see there is, if I just turn to the next slide here, you can see by the circled plan there. There is just that one lighting column proposed. The lights, we have a lighting strategy that's been submitted with the application, and the lamps will actually be kind of directly buried into the ground. There isn't anything that restricts the actual width of the access. There have been some concerns in terms of neighbour amenity and light spillage. You can see here from the light, this is an extract from the lighting strategy, which shows the maximum area of spillage, which is just, you can see here, it's just over the boundary of the access pathway. And going back, so where the light would be proposed is actually where the garage is here, and you can see that in context. So there isn't any properties directly adjacent to the pathway. So the application, again, is considered for approval, and that's set out in the officer's report. We have received some late representations, and they're actually in your extras report. I'm happy to take questions on that. There is one question that's been raised about the date of one of the plans that's shown for approval, and that can be amended. Just bear with me a second. And we're also looking to change the recommendation, again, given the fact that we would need to secure this by a Section 106 and a UU that's submitted from the applicant to ensure that the pathway remains maintained in perpetuity, and also to ensure that it's linked to the housing development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Walker. We now have some speakers, and the first speaker on this item is Mr David Hyde. Mr Hyde, do you require any extra speaking time?
Please, but I do have a question before we go forward, Chair. Where your circle is on that lamppost there, the driveway to the left sits within Hinckley and Bosworth. So your land cuts out the actual driveway. As it goes back round, it goes back round into Hinckley and Bosworth. So our friend here, whose house is there, you're doing this before Hinckley and Bosworth got there, and our councillors can't talk, and it directly, again, affects our resident in Hinckley and Bosworth. 215 Leicester Road is in Hinckley and Bosworth.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak? I mean, do you wish to speak?
Me? Myself, yes.
Yeah, on this item. We can't help the variety of borders and where they are at the moment. So,
however, yeah, but our resident can't have fair representation from his councillors.
can you please, if you like to speak, you've got 4 minutes to allow for you a disability.
Thank you.
And Ms Dobson will let you know when you have 1 minute left. Thank you.
Good evening again, councillors. There are two issues this proposal link. Both affect the ability for it to be used safely by people. Firstly, this is a width of 3.4 metres wide, which is too narrow to allow a vehicle to pass, a pushchair, wheelchair or cyclist. Leicester County Council Highways guidance accepts driveways to a single house to be 3.75 metres, where it's bound on both sides, which is what you'll see in the development. This doesn't meet that. So therefore, it's substandard to serve even one house, let alone public use as well. Despite the narrow width, adding 6 lighting columns along its length in Hinckley and Bosworth and 1 in Charnwood, thus reducing the width by 20 centimetres or more. This is more difficult. This is more difficult because the use from 215, which have skip lorries twice a month to remove and assist in removing green waste from a large plot, plus the resident has a number of large vehicles passing this route. We understand that his right of access is a civil matter, but it is also a material aspect into this planning application. It is stated within the committee report that the width of the access complies with the manual for streets as single lane carriageways. This should not be more than 3.5 metres. This is in relating to a single lane carriageway where road vehicles travelling in one direction with cyclists potentially on the carriageway. They should be travelling in the same direction. It is not related to a shared driveway, cycleway and footpath. Legislation is being misapplied. The 3.5 metre width is not directly acceptable and common sense needs to be applied here. You cannot have pedestrians and cycles sharing a 3.5 metre pathway. The recent report from the police dated the 8th of October 2025 still notes concerns over the narrowness of the pathway in the event of pedestrians and cyclists encountering a vehicle on the path. There is limited space to safely avoid it and not acceptable from their perspectives as inferred in the committee report. Secondly, the route provides no passive surveillance. The suggested master plan layout indicates the view where there's no new dwellings and the existing Leicester Road properties do not overlook the majority of its length. In design contrary to all good design guides and is included simply to make poor development supposedly okay to act as an access perspective. CCTV will be integrated into the situation. Okay, but CCTV is a bit of a deterrent. It does not stop crime completely. The lack of overlooking means it is not perceived as a safe route by many, particularly when dark or people on their own. The function of the access link is therefore somewhat diminished, with its benefits being overstated. Sorry, I've lost a page. No. Yeah, so we do think this needs to be stopped, and there are a number of policies like EV1 that needs to be taken into account, CS22, and I think it was CS2 as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hyde. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Lewis Roberts. Oh, hang on a minute. Yeah, Steve Lewis Roberts for the agents. One moment, please. Are you happy to go? You got your 3 minutes. When 1 minute is left, Miss Dobson will let you know.
Thank you. The site forms part of an existing vehicular and pedestrian access track from Leicester Road, and this proposal will provide a footway, cycleway to serve the adjacent housing development. The track will provide connectivity to Markfield, encouraging the new residents to walk and cycle and therefore meet the aims of sustainable development. There are no highway objections from the County Council, no amenity objections from the Council's Environmental Health Officer, and no ecology objections from the Council's biodiversity team. I would therefore request that the committee agrees with the officer recommendation to grant planning permission. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis Roberts. Our next speaker is Councillor Tim Port on behalf of Newtown Linford Parish Council. Thank you. You have 3 minutes to speak and you'll be warned when there's 1 minute remaining by Miss Dobson.
Yes, I understand. Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. I'm speaking again on behalf of Newtown Linford Parish Council, who wish to object to this application to upgrade the narrow access track between 215 and 217 Leicester Road. This proposal seeks to convert what is currently a private single-use access track into a lit and surfaced pedestrian and cycle route serving up to 115 dwellings. It would also retain vehicular access for an existing property. Our first concern is safety and suitability. The track is extremely narrow, too narrow to safely accommodate pedestrians, cyclists and vehicles at the same time. There is no physical separation between users and visibility is poor. In practice, this arrangement presents an unacceptable risk of conflict, particularly during darker hours and in adverse weather conditions. Secondly, on residential amenity, the track runs directly alongside 213A Leicester Road, whose windows overlook it at close range. The proposed lighting and significant increase in footfall would cause a serious loss of privacy, noise intrusion and light pollution for this and other nearby residents. What is currently a quiet private access would become a busy illuminated thoroughfare, fundamentally changing the character of the area. Thirdly, on context and necessity. This track is being promoted as a means of making the adjacent housing development sustainable by providing a walkable route to services in Markfield. However, in practice, it is a retrofitted justification for a development that remains remote from local facilities. Converting this restrained residential tract does not make the overall scheme sustainable. It simply transfers the impact onto existing residents of Leicester Road. In conclusion, the Parish Council believes this proposal is unsafe, intrusive, and wholly inappropriate for its location. It would cause loss of amenity and privacy to existing residents without delivering meaningful sustainability benefits. Members may recall a previous cross-boundary application for 93 dwellings on Ashby Road, Markfield, where Charnwood Borough Council granted permission, but Hinckley and Bosworth Borough Council refused. The Planning Inspectorate subsequently allowed the developer's appeal solely because Charnwood had already approved it. Had that not been the case, the appeal would have failed. This may be a slightly different situation, but members may want to avoid a repeat of that outcome. For these reasons, we urge the committee to refuse this application.
Thank you. Our final speaker on this item is Ward Councillor, Councillor Snott. Councillor Snott, you have 3 minutes to speak, and when there is 1 minute remaining, Miss Dobson will let you know.
Thank you. I believe that the information supplied in the committee papers are incorrect, and I will try and demonstrate why this is the case. Comments in the email from Head of Service to the LHA question the judgment that the proposed development site will only generate 5 pedestrian cycle trips at peak times. The Head of Service found himself struggling to understand this information, and if nothing else, further explanation is required. Going on to say, I do feel that given local interest in this site, a meeting would be very worthwhile and will avoid unnecessary uncertainty at the committee. Just what is happening now? The LHA refused to attend the meeting. This is a route to school and public transport for future residents living in 115 proposed houses. Therefore, this issue is unresolved. By the amount of S106 contributions for school places agreed, this information needs further scrutiny. This is madness to think only 5 pedestrian cycle trips at peak times will go down this track. Submissions by the LHA 20th of August 2025 to the public consultation referring to Manual for Streets, paragraph 723, single lane width should be no more than 3.5 metres, since they could result in drivers trying to squeeze past cyclists. The track in the administrated area of Charnwood Borough Council is over 3.5 metres, therefore does not conform to Manual for Streets, making the statement in the committee papers 10.6 incorrect and not in line with policies. This is the safety issue. The statement made in the committee papers is incorrect, therefore does not accord to policies CS2, CS18 of the core strategy and TR18 of the local plan, and does not provide safety access to the sustainable travel, noting that the 3.4 width cannot be achieved further down the track. The police submission, page 284, is not a good reflection of their comments provided by the case officer. They continue to have reservations regarding the narrowness of the path, whilst it understood that vehicles are restricted to 215 Leicester Road. It is likely that delivery drivers and visitors would also use the path in the event that the pedestrians or cyclists encounter a vehicle on the path. There is limited space to safely avoid it. At the last Plans Committee meeting, members saw the consequences of poor highway safety from the LHA. Members of this committee, it is in your gift to not let this happen again. The LHA have not supplied any policy details about the sight lines for the vehicles exiting out of 215 Leicester Road, and the policy details about the distance the garages would be from the track. These again do not conform to policies with the highway safety. In my view, we should be... I was taken away in my pride.
Thank you, Councillor Snart. Ms Walker, do you wish to respond to any of those comments?
Can I just clarify a couple of points, if that's okay, please? So firstly, it's acknowledged that we did have that meeting on site, Councillor Snart, and the issue of visibility for 215. Just so going back to the housing development, we do have a condition for boundary treatment as it meets the footpath. And it is proposed that we would have a chicane type approach in terms of a gated access. And this is to ensure that any cycles that are going from the development site to the footpath would slow down. County highways have suggested bollards, but we've thought we should go a step further and have a chicane gate to actually ensure that cyclists and pedestrians would slow down appropriately. So that's a way, again, to mitigate against the harm or concern about pedestrians and the sight lines from 215. Another point in terms of, the report clearly sets out that county highways have considered the application. They don't object to the application in terms of its width. And I think we have to consider that, yes, there is one dwelling that would use the access point and has vehicular rights over that access. But given, the width of the access point, it's very unlikely that that car or those cars accessing 215 would be travelling at any great speed. And so that, as set out in the report, pedestrians and vehicles using that one residential property are considered to be able to coexist safely. In terms of the garages mentioned, I've reviewed these quite a lot on site and my site visits, and I thought we should check the planning history to see, if they had been approved, and that there is no planning history for those garages. So, whilst they seem to have been in position for a long time, they were potentially constructed under permitted development rights maybe, or it's something that's not been maybe picked up before. They also don't show on Hinckley and Bosworth planning history either. So I just thought I should make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, if I could just add to what Ms Walker said. When members were on site today, we did actually observe that one of the garages has been converted into a home gym and workspace, so it doesn't look capable of accommodating a car.
Thank you. So, members of our committee, if you'd like to comment on this application, can you please raise your hand to indicate? Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you to the speakers and the officers. I propose we accept officers' recommendation.
Do we have a seconder?
I will second that, but there's comments that I need to make.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions that members wish to make? Councillor Palmer.
Chair, Councillor Seaton wants to make some comments before you move on.
Oh, do you want to make your comments before Councillor Palmer speaks? Councillor Palmer.
You. As this would only serve the 115 houses, it would only be of benefit to those who live on that development, should it go ahead. Then I wouldn't be able, as I'm opposed to that development, I wouldn't be able to vote for this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton.
Thank you, Chair. Connectivity is extremely important to be able to be part of the community. And I believe that having a pedestrian and cycle track for that connectivity reason is very important. But what I would like to say is I assume, first of all, there'll be a speed limit, and it will be placed within that. And I think the speed limit is 5 miles or 10 miles an hour when it's a shared space with pedestrians. So I would like one of the conditions to make sure that there is a speed limit put on that stretch of the path there.
Yep. Sorry. Thank you for the comments. The application site isn't an adopted highway, so therefore, unfortunately, we wouldn't have control over the speed limits.
Strike one. If it's not adopted by, I was going to request then that the barriers put there were K barriers to stop off-roaders. A lot of the new developments now put in lots of nice, beautiful, meandering footpaths, which are very attractive to bikers, not cyclists, bikers. And the K barriers are quite effective at slowing down it'll slow down cyclists, but it will restrict most fuel-powered cycles. But of course, then you've got the problem of, not the problem, but it's radar gate probably for the disabled there. So I'd like it really to be looked into about how we can make the site unattractive to off-roaders using it. I don't know whether that's the right term. People on motorbikes using it. Thank you.
Yeah, so as I said previously, so just sort of going back a step, sorry, we're only dealing with this small parcel, so we can't deal with anything from Leicester Road. And we have imposed a condition for some form of gated access from the development onto the pathway, which we are hoping it would be a chicane type gate, because that would slow people down as opposed and actually stop, motorbikes and things, I would suggest, as opposed to the bollards that were previously considered to be acceptable.
So we're going to get details of that, aren't we?
Sorry?
We're going to get details of that under the conditions.
Yeah, and we will be getting details of that under the condition 16 of the housing development. Thank you.
My other question was the lighting. I understand just on this bit it's one, but you're talking about a pole, so it will be seen. Have we considered, obviously it has been considered, low level lighting, that it does not interfere with, I think it's the person behind me and her property, if it's a low level lighting instead of on a high pole?
Yeah, they are actually 2 meters high, the lighting column, but the lighting strategy, if I can just go back to the slide, if that's okay, or forward to the slide. Shows the type of light that's been proposed. So the light actually shines upwards And in terms of the brightness of that light, it's at the lowest possible level that it can be that considers safety as well as impact on residents. And again, going back to, again, from the lighting spillage, you can see that the area of spillage doesn't actually affect any of the neighbouring properties at all. It just very, very slightly crosses the border. And just one other point, if you don't mind, the environmental health team have reviewed this application and they haven't objected in terms of impact on neighbours. Thank you.
For my education then, and only for that, why does the light go upwards if it's and not downwards?
It's the way the lighting has been designed to reduce impact on neighbours, but whilst providing a safe access.
Councillor Fryer.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. A number of points have been raised and suggestions and questions, and I would hope that the developer's representative here, the agent, has made a note, and possibly when we come back to us for more detailed information, decisions, that this is taken into account. Well, the other thing we could do is obviously make, I believe it's called an informative, if anybody's would really like to see something else, and if we could an informative note that would be in the records and would normally, one would hope, be looked at if anybody has any concerns.
Can I ask our officers, is voting on this access application, it's not like a outline plan followed by details, it's just go for it or not?
Yeah, it's a full application because we have the full detail. We have the lighting plan, we have a lighting strategy, we have the surfacing that's proposed. There would be no more further detail required. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, have you got any more questions or comments about this item? Then we've got a proposal by Councillor Fryer, seconded by Councillor Seaton, to go with officer's recommendation and the amendment. All those in favour?
That's 8.
All those against?
That's 1. So the motion
Any
is carried.
abstentions? Thank you.
Sorry, that motion's carried, Chair.
Thank you.
Chair, can I suggest a 1 minute break? 5 minutes.
5
Firstly,
minutes.
to allow me to get to the toilet, and secondly, to allow
Oh,
members of the
definitely
public who
not
wish
then.
to leave. Thank you.
Members, we'll have a 5-minute break if you can get back as soon as you've been to the toilet. Bye. There, that was a surprise, wasn't it? Shall we resume the meeting? And we are now looking at item 5D, planning reference number P/24/0610/2, Loughborough Road, Burton on the Wolds. Councillor Snart's back in his seat, I'm pleased to see. I'd like to refer to our planning officer, Ms Walker.
Thank you, Chair. The application we have before us to consider is the reserved matters application. The application was allowed at appeal for the outline subject to conditions and the of section 106. So this application, we're actually looking at the detail in terms of landscaping, layout and scale. And the application proposes 56 dwellings, which was approved under the outline application to show that the site was able to accommodate 56 dwellings. Just before we carry on with the presentation, we have received a number of late representations or representations from the local community, and they are set out in the extras report. In the main, the concerns raised are about amenity, particularly the properties along the eastern boundary, and there's concern about how close the development is and the changing levels. We've also received a late piece of information from the agent or from the applicant in terms of the open space. The section 106 requires us to have a maintenance plan and the details of the play equipment. That's now been submitted. The open spaces team have confirmed that they don't object and they agree with the information that's been submitted. So moving on to the application. So this is the application outline. You can see there are residential properties just on two sides of the development. Over to the north west is the Presswold Hall and Grade 2 listed gardens. Again, so site just in context here, it's always helpful to have a green kind of overhead aerial picture just to see a bit more context. You can see the planting that's associated with the Grade 2 listed buildings, Grade 2 listed park. And there's also a Grade 2 listed building over to the east, the northeast. Is it too noisy? Okay, sorry. And there's also the residential properties you can see highlighted over to the east. The other residential properties do have Loughborough Road separating from the site. Going back to the appeal, at the time the inspector considered the appeal, there was a parameters plan submitted, and this plan was actually part of the decision notice in terms of a condition. So the condition states that the development should be in accordance with the parameters plan, and you can see the development. So we've got the parameters plan on the left and the development proposal layout on the right. So you can see we're in accordance or broadly in accordance with the parameters plan. The appeal documents also secured the fact that we couldn't have any buildings in a protected area in the neighbourhood plan, which is area O. You can see there's a red arrow here on the left-hand side plan. We have, as you can see on the right-hand side plan, which is the layout plan, we don't have any buildings within that area. So again, we're in accordance with the appeal in that respect. So the key issues here, I won't go through them all. We've got the principle of the development, which has been accepted by the permission, the outline permission, and then we go through the rest of the points. I'm going to focus on some of these points, but if there's any questions as we go through, then I'm more than happy to take them later. So as you can see, just in a bit more detail, the layout plans provided, we have the approved access coming from Loughborough Road, and then we have an internal spine road that kind of spears off into some private, more sort of narrow roads that serve the development. In the main, the properties face outwards in accordance with the design guide, and the urban design officer has worked very closely with the applicant to get an agreed design in terms of layout. You can also see here that we have a leap in the large green space over to the west. Just some examples of the affordable housing types. So you can see traditional type forms, equally kind of traditional appearance materials with chimneys and detail, which will be, it is in the extras report too. A lot of that detail will be conditioned to make sure that that's secured. Again, a good mix here of bricks and type of frontages in terms of the design of the properties. Again, urban design officers have worked very closely with the applicant to get an agreed design here. In terms of neighbour amenity, there is a long discussion around this point in the officer report. I have extracted out the layout plan just for ease. So on the left-hand side, you can see the properties proposed, and then on the right-hand side, I've just completed a table just to help with finished floor levels, and so everybody can see what is actually proposed. I have to say, the dwellings here are located some 30 metres away from the residential properties in Brookwood Place, and that alone is something that's accepted by the design guide. It is understood and acknowledged that that there are some level changes here, but given the distance and we do have the wild kind of meadow corridor running through to form a clear separation, it is considered that the impact on residents wouldn't be significantly harmful. Again, so when the inspector looked at the appeal and considered the appeal, it was very important to the inspector that the view from the Presswold Hall Park to the listed building over to the east, that those views were uninterrupted. And you can see again from the layout plan, whilst there is an indicative SUDS feature, there is actually no built form at all in that area. Access and connectivity. The top plan just shows and confirms that the access is in accordance with the conditions set out in the outline permission, and it is actually in accordance with what was approved at outline. We also have a redirected public right of way, because having discussions with County Highways, we realised that the pathway that's designated currently is very close to the hedgerow, so that is proposed to be diverted. So to conclude, as I said, the principle of the application or the development of this site is accepted, and we are looking at the detail here. The proposed development is in accordance with the parameters plan, and that does constrain us. I know that there has been, some comments about, neighbours saying, well, can we not move the development, further over to the west? We are constrained by the parameters plan that was approved, and it is in accordance with what the inspector considered to be appropriate. In terms of public benefits, we have a 40% affordable housing scheme coming forward. We have a very large area of open space, particularly over to the north. So the development settles within the existing landscape. We have a landscaping scheme which has been approved by our landscaping officers. This is subject to further tree planting because we do consider that we can have some better tree planting within the site. There are biodiversity enhancements and there are limited identified harms to the heritage assets. And the recommendation by officers is set out in the officer report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ms Walker. We have 4 speakers on this item. The first one is Mr David Phillipson. Mr Phillipson, welcome. Are you familiar with the equipment? Councillor O'Neill will help you. So you have 3 minutes to speak. When you have 1 minute remaining, Ms Dobson will let you know.
Good evening, members of the Plans Committee. I live in one of the 4 properties along the eastern boundary that have been identified to be negatively impacted upon by this development. We would ask you to refuse this application and send these plans back for some straightforward and minor modifications to help reduce this negative impact. The inspector who allowed this development on appeal did so, intending that the eastern boundary specifically be treated sensitively. In paragraph 46 of the report, he said, and I quote, "I am content that it would be possible to design a detailed development proposal such that the harmful effects upon the living conditions of existing neighbouring occupiers to the east would be avoided." The developer has chosen to make the eastern boundary one of the most densely populated sections of the site, with a concentration of overbearing semi-detached dwellings presenting a continuous solid wall and set at a minimum required distance from existing properties. No site section drawings have been provided to demonstrate what existing occupiers will see when looking west, and no accurate surveys taken of any extensions. Visuals and drawings to show the relationship between existing and proposed dwellings would show if the design adequately mitigates the harmful effects and follows the government inspector's directive. The properties along Brickwood are low-lying 1.5-storey chalet style, set on lower ground. The differential in height between the existing and new houses at the back of my own property is 4.5 metres in places. This is absolutely opposite of what was specified in the appeal decision. Rather than avoiding harmful effects, it concentrates them. One small change that would really help would be to swap the 4 plots of 2-storey semi-detached houses, plots 45 to 42, with the 1 larger plot that are presently positioned on the outside of the development. Swapping these over would reduce the overall density of the houses along the eastern border and create a break in the solid wall to allow visibility and light. Increasing the width of the wildlife border to create greater separation and the introduction of some more bungalows along the eastern border would also be welcome. In summary, it has not been demonstrated how the harmful effects on the existing neighbouring properties have been avoided. The development proposals fail to protect the amenity of existing neighbours with a solid block of semi-detached dwellings and does not follow the inspector's directive to design a development to avoid the harmful effects upon the existing occupiers. There are material considerations that we would ask that you refuse this application and ask for these minor modifications as suggested. I just want to make one further comment if I can fit. Oh, sorry, I won't then. Thank you. Thank you.
So close, Mr. Phillipson, but thank you.
Thank you very much.
The next speaker is Mr. Rob Thornley, who is the applicant. Mr. Thorley, you have 3 minutes to speak. Are you familiar with the equipment? Yeah. When you've got 1 minute remaining, Ms. Dobson will let you know.
There we go. Sorry about that. Thank you, Chair, and good evening, members of the committee. This application is submitted by Gelson Homes, a 130-year-old family-run business based just down the road in Leicester. Gelson employs over 700 local people, a good proportion of whom are residents of Charnwood. The approval of the planning application this evening is important to Gelson's build programme for the new year and will help to ensure continuity for our workforce. The principle of development on this site has already been firmly established. We have worked closely with your officers over the last 18 months to develop a high-quality scheme that responds to the local context and responds where possible to the concerns of the local community. Since tabling our initial scheme, changes have been made to the design and layout to respond to comments and concerns. This includes adding a wildflower buffer zone between the new houses and existing properties in Brickwood Place, locating bungalows for much of this same boundary. And I would just note that there are a number of bungalows that you can see on the drawing. The bottom 4 on the eastern boundary are all bungalows. We introduced a tree-lined main avenue. We've also introduced lanes to the edges of the development to create a softer, more rural character. We've also changed the house types to these edges to provide a more broken character, which is more reflective of the village location. Concerns have been raised about the location of the open space and why this is not more centrally positioned. This was, however, fixed by the parameters plan at outline stage. Its siting is deliberate and responds to the need to respect the setting of Prestwold Hall and its park and garden. That said, this is a relatively small development and no property is more than a couple of minutes' walk from the extensive open space and play areas. Questions have also been raised about the slope of the site and how this will be addressed and possibly the impact of retaining walls. As members will have seen on site earlier today, the site does slope and so an engineering solution is required to address this. Our approach has, however, been to use soft landscaping features and natural banking to accommodate the change in levels, such that large retaining walls will not be needed in the public realm. Where limited retaining structures are required, these will be contained within rear gardens, but will not be excessive with a maximum height of 1 metre. Separation distances between the new and existing houses will comfortably exceed the council's local plan minimum standards. All properties will be provided with EV charging points, solar panels and air source heat pumps, which combined with Gelson's solid wall construction will make the development highly efficient. All in all, we and your officers consider this to be a good quality scheme that respects its local context, meets the council's design policies and accords with the parameters set by the outline planning permission, including the relationship with Prestwold Hall. Accordingly, I would respectfully request that members endorse the recommendation of officers this evening and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thorley. Our next speaker is Councillor Robert Shields on behalf of Burton-on-the-Wolds, Coates and Prestwold Parish Council. Nice to see you, Councillor Shields.
Good evening, Madam Chairman.
Are you familiar with the...
I think so,
okay,
yes.
Okay, you have 3 minutes to speak, and then when 1 minute is remaining, Ms Dobson will let you know.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Madam Chairman and Planning Committee. I'm not going to speak for too long because most of what the Parish Council is concerned about are in your pack. And there are just a couple of items that I don't think have still been addressed, despite the fact that we've raised this on several occasions with your officers. One of them is the mix of open market properties. We know there are 4 bungalows on the site, but they are affordable bungalows. There are no open market bungalows. And within our neighbourhood plan, there is a requirement for bungalows to be put on the site. There were some comments from the applicant that there was no condition requiring bungalows in the outline. Well, there were no conditions on any types of houses in the outline because it was outline. One thing we are still concerned about, and one of the previous plans that was shown was the views to Presswold and mainly to Field House. And what is happening here is that from the balancing pond you can see there up to the perimeter road to the north, that area of land is being raised by 3.2 metres, and the footpath therefore that comes from the end of Seymour Road to join that will increase in height as well to get up there. And tree planting, that will also be obtrusive regarding the views to Field House. And I would like to put to you that this is a material alteration from the outline planning permission, and it needs addressing before you approve this layout. All we want is a good scheme in our village, and we think there are some points still that need addressing here before it is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Shields. Our next speaker is, it would have been Ward Councillor Bocker. She's not here, so you've got to ask. She's asked if she can get me to write out a statement that she's sent to us. So you have to vote on whether I read Councillor Bocker's statement. All those in agreement? Because you never know, do you? Any against? Okay. So I'm now Councillor Boker. You have heard this evening of the concerns we have with this newly amended Reserved Matters application and the associated plans report recommending approval. Number one, not least, is the fact that the new reconsultation only ended on Monday the 10th, and the planning officer was away until Tuesday the 11th, so has not yet had time to consider any additional comments. However, the Plans Committee report for this meeting was added to the website on the 5th of November, recommending approval. Surely that is predetermination. Number two, there are inaccuracies within the Plans Committee report itself. Figure 7 on page 43 of the report, relating to the relationship between Field House and the proposed layout, is wrong and not in line with the revision Y of the engineering layout document. This is news to me, which is called the layout plan. Similarly, item 9.7.13 on page 41 refers to plots 40 and 45 as affordable housing, but only plots 42 to 45 are now affordable housing in the layout plan. So you may be making a decision on an inaccurate report. In addition to the errors identified above, we believe that the report has omitted some key aspects. In particular, this applies to the issue of the finished floor levels and retaining walls and the resultant height of the new buildings being higher in relation to the existing properties in Brickwood Place. It is of great importance to residents of Brickwood Place that a site section of the eastern boundary, north to south, looking west from the rear of their properties towards the development, is made available to enable residents and planning officers to fully understand the relationship between the existing and proposed dwellings on this boundary. Again, why has this been left out? Lastly, the impact on the neighbouring properties in Brickwood Place. We believe the applicant has not demonstrated how harmful effects on the living conditions of the existing neighbourhood dwellings to the east on Brickwood Place have been appropriately mitigated, something the inspector highlighted in his decision report, stating that it should be possible to design a detailed development proposal such that harmful effects, including undue loss of privacy, outlook or light, would be avoided. Clearly that has not been done, but could be done by interchanging other proposed properties on the layout plan, or even open market bungalows, which are badly needed in Burton and were in Burton's neighbourhood plan, but appear to have been ignored. Oh, sorry, you get the gist. So members, stop hitting this microphone. So members, if you'd like to comment on this application, oh no, I've got to ask the officer first. Officer, would you like to, Officer Walker, would you like to redress any of those comments?
Just a couple. In terms of inaccuracies, we have picked up on the points within the extra report. I should have mentioned that. I do apologise. There was just a plan revision Y was left in the report. Sorry, the older revision. So I've entered revision Y into the extras report. So that in terms of the inaccuracies, and with the plots, yes, and again, that's been responded to in the extras report. The layout plan that's actually in front of you now is the one that would be approved with the correct numbers on. Thank you.
Thank you. Now it's time for members of the Planning Committee. If you wish to comment or ask any questions about this application, please raise your hand. Councillor Infield.
Thank you, Chair. My only comment is with regard to the uninhibited views that we heard about. And I had also wondered about the tree planting in that top right-hand corner, which would seem to obscure those views. And I think that was a point picked up by Councillor Shields. So I'm not sure what we can do about that, but I would, if that was an important requirement, then I don't think that tree planting is consistent with it. And I wonder what we can do about it. So it's a question to the planning officer, I guess.
The landscaping is actually a part of the Reserve Matters application, and the tree planting that's shown on the plan here would be one that we would look to approve. The further tree planting we're looking for is to have more substantial trees with street trees within the development itself. Thank you.
I didn't quite understand how that allows for these uninhibited views of the listed property, as the trees would seem, that the trees suggested in that plan would seem to obscure that view.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Are you referring to the trees in the open space between the park, the gardens and the heritage assets? Sorry,
Yeah, the ones that are on that curve in the top right-hand corner of the plan would seem to interfere with views of the listed property, which I understand is to the right of that green area.
Yeah, that is correct. That is the position of the listed building. Yeah, I acknowledge there are some trees to be planted. I think reading the inspector's report, it was more about not having obscured views in terms of buildings. I think, yes, we have got tree planting along there, but that would also help to soften the development. But that area still meets the requirements of the inspector in terms of actually having no built form there to obscure the views. Thank you.
Councillor Smidovic.
Thank you, Chair. I do take the point that the right side of that plan looks very squashed in comparison to the left-hand side. And I've been sort of trying to debate what it is that's bothering me. And looking down at Councillor Boker's comments, it was the parking. I can't see a sense of what the front of the house looks like in relation to the parking. The size of the garage, the size of the streets, whether it's going to be all parking on the pavements. I just don't get a feel of the site itself.
So, yeah, there are different types of parking. So we have some tandem type parking areas alongside the dwellings. And there are also some, but very minimal amounts of on-street parking, which are broken up by the landscaping scheme. And some of the, yeah, they're the tandem ones just there. And then, you know, some properties will have garages which are set along the driveways.
So just coming back on that, the size of the the size of the garage, is it for a mini or is it for something larger? Bearing in mind it's a village and we do get larger cars in many of the villages. I won't name the car because I got slated years ago for not liking 4x4s, which wasn't quite the system that I was trying to convey. But I don't get, if they're tandem, one in front of the other, I'm taking you mean by tandem, one will have to back out to allow the other to come out. So is there turning space? And I just don't get a feel of that at all.
It's not distorting it, I don't think, is it? Is that helpful?
Very technical terms. That's it. There you go.
Yeah.
I'd like to street scene, to be honest.
We do have a street scene on file, and that's to do with the levels and how the developer's coping with the levels on the site. But you can see we do have parking associated with the dwellings, and as I said, some have parking areas which are tandem with garages to the back. Some of the properties will just have parking. The County Highways team have reviewed the parking spaces and the amount of parking and have considered that to be acceptable. In terms of the garage sizes, again, that would have been considered with the county. They're very careful on what they're approving in terms of size of garages to ensure that they're actually used as opposed to just used for storage or not for storing cars. Thank you.
Councillor Seaton.
Thank you. Can you just tell me, and I bet it tells me in here, but I'd like to know if you know, the difference between the grey and the orange. Is it obviously tarmac and brick, or the street, the treatment?
So the grey identifies a kind of main spinal road, and that would be tarmac. And then the other are more informal roads, kind of private driveways as such, and that will actually, I'm not quite sure, I haven't got the details, but we have got that detail on file.
Thank you. And is this to be privately maintained by a land development, or is it potentially going to be adopted by Highways?
Internal main road would be adopted.
So the tarmacked run, yes, but the other ones will be in the private domain. Thank you. that's lovely blowing it up like that. But could you just move it now to the one of the field? That's it. And can you, oh, no, we won't be able to see. Because I wasn't on site today, and I do hear what one of the people said about the 1, 2, 3, 4 existing houses, which I have got big gardens. I presume they're all very, they've got trees and shrubs and hedges at the bottom of their gardens. It's not an open vista to the field at the moment, is it? They're all built up?
There is some mixed planting along the boundary.
Thank you. Councillor Snart.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Through you, could I just have a few questions? Just looking at the Burton Walls-Coates Parish Council, there's appear lack of mixing tenure of the properties, concentration of affordable dwellings. Does the 23 actual meet the criteria of the policy?
So could you repeat that, Councillor Snart? Can I just clarify, do you mean that the affordable or?
The affordable, yeah. We've got 2 areas apparently affordable. We've got 23. Does that meet the actual criteria of our planning policy?
Yes, it does, and it's also in accordance with the Section 106.
I thought it was 10 in actual areas together.
Do you mean the clustering? Sorry. Yes. So the clustering. So yeah, we've acknowledged that in the report that there is, I think it's 1 or 2 dwellings over the 10. But it's the way that we've worked through the design, and the affordable housing officer has reviewed that point, and she's not overly concerned that we're just 1 or 2 over from the 10 of clustering.
I didn't quite catch what it was, but it came at one of the speakers, but they were talking about higher levels of 4 metres, and it was around the footpath. Well, can you just give us a bit more detail about that? And does it come level, well, what we should be doing within the
Okay, yeah. So the inspector did place a condition on the decision notice for a levels plan to be submitted, which has been. We've had further detailed levels submitted. And so the gradients and the level changes within the site, there are some, we would acknowledge there are some significant level changes. But the developer has worked very hard to soften those gradients so they're not, they're not too steep, and in terms of kind of so the development settles in with the landscape. And also we've the developer and the engineering plan makes it clear that we have these gradients so that it's in accordance with county highways in terms of pathways and highways. Thank you.
And finally, I might say, here we go again. When I look at the housing mix, market mix, we've got 4 beds now, 48%, where it should be 15 to 25. I always feel a bit sorry for young people in villages that want to actually get onto the housing ladder, and we're doing this or taking it away from them in terms of what should be there. I mean, we should be looking at the market mix that is provided by Henna, and it's just so far away from what we should be achieving. And I come here times and we go through, and I know some people say we should have bigger houses because that's what we want to do, but we can't get people actually coming down in size, or young people in their villages being able to get on the property ladder. So I'm a bit concerned that every time that we see, or nearly every time, we see the high end coming out in market housing mix. Do we have any control over this, or is it just something we give into?
Thank you. It's a relevant question. So when we, as an authority, are dealing with outline planning permissions now, we are securing a housing mix that's in accordance with the HENA. That has got missed sometimes in the past. And in this particular case, the inspector didn't impose a condition for housing mix. Currently, we do have a policy that talks about, we have to, yes, we have to consider the figures within the need figures in the HENA, but we also have to consider the character of the area. So in this instance, yes, we've acknowledged that there is a higher level of 4+ bedrooms homes, but overall we are very close to the HENA in terms of the affordable and the market. And as I said, the inspector unfortunately didn't impose a condition at the outline stage when this matter is controlled.
So just to get a bit more information, I'm a great believer in the neighbourhood plan, and so what are we saying now is that the what we missed out with the inspector, this overrides what the neighbourhood plan is saying.
Unfortunately, yes. There was no condition actually on the outline consent to help us to secure a mix. The mix that we have, as I said, overall with the affordable and the market is very close to the HENA, but we do acknowledge there are some larger properties over the need, the identified need.
It's not your turn yet, Margaret. One moment. Councillor Corey-Losley.
I won't be too long, Margaret, don't worry. Councillor Snart said a lot of what I was going to say. Broadly, this is a very nice development. It's proportional. The report sets out well why we should be in favour of it, and I am in favour of it, definitely. But I do agree with Councillor Snart. It is always disappointing to see that mix in, so disproportionately in favour of the very large properties. I've discussed that with the officers, and we've got to make our peace with that. There's reasons for it. One of the speakers, I think, I forgot his name, the chap in the parish council, mentioned that there's a requirement in the neighbourhood plan for bungalows, but for reasons you've just explained, Linda, we're not getting those, aren't we? We can't have those because that neighbourhood plan is overridden. Is that why we're not seeing bungalows on this site? There are bungalows. I'm sorry, affordable bungalows.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. We've just looked through the neighbourhood plan, and it certainly does talk about bungalows, and forgive me if I'm wrong, but it does say a mix of houses and types. It doesn't suggest that there's a difference between affordable and market. And we do have 4 bungalows on this site. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. On that basis, I'm happy to propose that we accept officer recommendations with the addition of the points raised in the extras report. A few bits, I think, relating to tree planting, the gates, and some design amendments to plot 50. Thank you.
Councillor Smidovics.
I meant to add before as well that I think it was the parish council commented on the parking that it was inadequate, and the overspill parking will go where? They've said surrounding roads and verges, so I don't know whether there's anything that can accommodate visitors, but the thing that worries me most was written above that. The proposed play area is somewhat isolated and overlooked by very few properties, and the proposed planting trees are obstructing the views, and it's near the suds. So what protection is going to be given to children that like to explore with the closeness to the suds? Is it going to be protected in any major way for the children?
There are distances that are within the strategy, the open space strategy, for the distance from leaps to suds. And I believe it's something like 30 metres. And the open space team have recommended that this application is approved based on where the leap is positioned. And it's also has been considered in terms of the distance from the properties. I think we've got, potentially 2 or 3 properties that would be overlooking the play space. Again, we have a parameters plan showing where the built form should be from the inspector, and the leap has been discussed at some length, and this was considered to be the best position for it on this site.
Councillor Seaton.
One, there is an awful lot of road there that has got the other side of the road to park on. So I think there'll be on-street parking available there. And I get your meaning that it might be verge parking, which is annoying. But there you go. And I'll second the proposal.
Thank you. Are there any more comments or questions about this application? Okay, so we've got a proposal by Councillor Corey-Loseley, seconded by Councillor Seaton, to accept officer's recommendation along with the amendments and additional conditions in the extras report. All those in favour?
That's 10.
All those against?
It's 1.
Okie dokie, I've abstained.
That motion is carried.
At the back of the pack is item 6, list of applications determined under delegated powers. Does the committee have any questions or comments on any of those items? No. And I'm going to announce that I'm closing the meeting. Thank you all for your attendance.